Welcome back for Chapter 29. For most of November, Winter toyed with Two Mills, whispered in its ear, tickled it under the chin, but on Thanksgiving Thursday, Winter kicked it in the stomach. There's some neat personification for Winter there, huh? But that didn't stop the old man and the boy from joining the 10,000 who thronged to the stadium on the boulevard to see the traditional high school football game. The Arctic air laid panes of ice over the crayfish edge pools of Stony Creek. The effect was the opposite on human noses, though. Maniac and Grayson's noses ran like faucets, and not a handkerchief in sight. So they used their sleeves and grabbed handfuls of napkins from the refreshment stand. Two Mills won the game, thanks to a last-minute 73-yard touchdown pass from quarterback Dennehy to James, hands down. From the instant his old trash-talking Sandlot pal cradled the ball in his long brown fingers, Maniac was jumping on his seat, screaming trash at Hans's pursuers every step to the goal line, and glancing around just to make sure Mrs. Beale wasn't around to hear it. By the time they got back to the baseball room, they were nearly frozen. But the freeze was good, for it made the warmth of that little apartment all the more welcome. Within 15 minutes, the space heater had the place positively tropical, while in the toaster oven their 5-pound Thanksgiving chicken was already beginning to brown. A pair of hot plates and a squad of pots were pressed into action, and by mid-afternoon, the two were sitting down to a feast of roast chicken, gravy, cranberry sauce, applesauce, SpaghettiOs, raisins, pumpkin pie, and what? Butterscotch crumpets, of course. So Maniac and Grayson, they're doing very well together. I'm happy to see Maniac with somebody that cares about him. Remember that they're not actually, I guess, officially living together at this point, but Maniac's been telling Grayson, oh, you can just stay here instead of staying in his room at the Y. So it almost seems like Maniac's realizing maybe he can have a family. Maniac thought of Thanksgiving's past, of sitting around a joyless table, his aunt and uncle as silent and lifeless as the mammoth bird they gnawed on. And he said this grace: Dear God, we want to take this opportunity to thank you for the best Thanksgiving dinner I ever had. I guess I shouldn't speak for my friend Grayson. He peeked across the table. Grayson, he whispered, is this your best one too? The old man opened one eye. He shrugged. Don't know. Ain't tasted it yet. Maniac glared, rolled his eyes, and hissed, Grayson! The old man flinched. Yeah. He squinted his one eye at that chicken. Yeah, I guess it is the best. The best? Maniac prompted. Yeah, the best, Grayson said. Maniac went on. And we want to thank you for this warm house and for our own little family here and for Grayson learning to read. He's already read 13 books, as I'm sure you already know. And one more thing. If you could find some way to let the Beale family know I'm wishing them a happy Thanksgiving, I'd really appreciate it. They're the ones on 728 Sycamore Street, God, in case there's any other Beales around. Amen. Amen, said Grayson. Did you notice there that Maniac referred to this now as a house and Grayson as his family? So we're seeing how much he's changed from the last, how he felt about that last chapter. They stuffed themselves silly, then collapsed and listened to polka music. Grayson had brought over a record player the week before, along with his entire music collection, which was 31 polka records. Grayson loved polkas. Of course, one cannot listen to polka music for long before getting up and dancing, which is what the two Thanksgivers did as soon as their bloated stomachs allowed. They danced and they laughed, record after record. Whether it was the polka they danced exactly is another question. It was nearly dark, both of them having re-collapsed, when Maniac said, is there any paint around? Any idea what he might want that paint for? Guess so, said Grayson. What for? You'll see. Can you get me some, please, and a brush? The old man dragged himself up. What color? How about black? 5 minutes later, the old man was back. I got brown. That do? Fine, said Maniac. He opened the can, stirred the paint, put a jacket on, grabbed the paintbrush, and went outside. Grayson followed, and he watched the kid paint on the outside of the door in careful strokes, 1, 101. Maniac stepped back, admiring his work. 101, he proclaimed. 101 Bandshell Boulevard. So what did he do? He gave them an official address, right? Just like when he lived at the Beals, he was so excited to go look at that address, 728 Sycamore Street. He was so happy to double check that he had an address. And remember, he said how he couldn't go to school because school was the place where you would go during the day and then you would go to your own address at night, and he didn't have one. So I don't know if this will make him go back to school or not, but we're definitely seeing that Maniac feels at home with Grayson. He feels like this is his address, not just a place he kind of has to stay. All right, chapter 30 now. If Thanksgiving was wonderful, Christmas was paradise. By now, Grayson had officially moved out of the Y and into 101 Bandshell Boulevard. Thanks to his long acquaintanceship with the locker room attendant, he and Maniac were privileged to continue using the Y's shower facilities at their pleasure. For decoration outside, they nailed a wreath to their door. There was only one small window, and it had no sill to hold a candle, so they used some spray snow. Inside, though, was another story. Santa's elves themselves would have felt at home there. Strings of popcorn swooped across the ceiling. Evergreen branches flared at random, dispersing their piney aroma. There's some good sensory details right there. Whenever there were a few vacant square inches, something Christmassy appeared. A porcelain Santa, a partridge in a pear tree, a matchbox nativity set. One day, Grayson dragged a pair of tree limbs in and started sawing away. When he was finished, a wooden reindeer stood in the room, big enough for Maniac to ride. Of course, the tree got the most attention of all, and by the time the two of them had finished trimming it, their tree trimming instincts having been left alone for so many Christmases, hardly a pine needle could be seen under the tinsel and ornaments and whatnot. In fact, though they were delighted with their effort, the urge to trim was still upon them. One room was simply too small to hold all of that bursting Christmas spirit. So they went outside and crossed the creek and tramped the woods until they came to a fine and proper evergreen tree. And there, their footsteps muffled by the carpet of pine needles, their every breath whispered word arrayed in frosty white, they trimmed their second tree. This time, the ornaments were nature's brilliant red and yellow necklaces of bittersweet, pungent pine cones, wine-red clusters of berries, abandoned bird-bodied boats of milkweed, and delicate thumb-sized goblets of Queen Anne's lace. So maybe you've heard of some of those things from nature, maybe not, but it's just all the beautiful colors they found in nature that they used to decorate that pine tree. It's so nice to see Maniac and Grayson having such a good Christmas together. I know a lot of you in your feedback on the forums last week, you were just saying you wanted to see Maniac happy and you wondered where he would live or if he would find a family or somebody to take care of him. And Grayson certainly did the trick. All right, chapter 31. It was still dark when Maniac awoke on Christmas morning. Within an hour or two, the holiday would come bounding down the stairs and squealing around the tinseled trees of Two Mills. But for the moment, Christmas bided its time. Outside, a purer presence. Maniac shook Grayson awake, but he kept holding the old man's hand when he reached to turn on the light, and they bundled themselves and they ventured into the silent night. And Maniac carried a paper bag with him. Snow had fallen several days before. In much of the town, it had been plowed or shoveled or slushed away. But in the park, along the creek, the woods, the playing fields, the playground, it still lay undisturbed, except for the tracks of rabbits and squirrels. And beyond the tall pines, stars glittered like snowflakes reluctant to fall. Boy, that's a pretty scene to visualize, isn't it? They visited their tree that they decorated. They stood silently, just happy to be near it, letting the magic of it drift over them. In the pine-patched moonlight, the Queen Anne's goblets looked for all the world like silver. They walked the creek woods all the way to the zoo, meandering wordlessly throughout the snowy enchantment. As if by design, they both stopped at the same spot, above the half-submerged, rooty clump of a fallen tree. Somewhere under there, they knew, was the den of a family of muskrats. The old man laid a pine branch in the doorway, and Maniac whispered, "Merry Christmas." They visited the animals at the zoo, at least the outdoor ones, wishing them a happy holiday. The ducks seemed particularly pleased to see them. By the time they came to the buffalo pen, dawn was showing through the trees. Before the old man even finished saying, "Want a boost?" Maniac hopped up over the fence. If the mother buffalo was glad to see that fence-hopping human again, she didn't show it. But Baby came trotting over, and the two of them had a nice warm reunion. Before leaving, Maniac reached into that paper bag he brought and got out a present. "For you," he said to the baby buffalo. It was a scarf, or rather, 3 scarves tied together, and he wrapped them around Baby's neck. "Next year, I'll get you stockings for your horns," he said, "if you have horns by then." And a final little nuzzle, and he was back out over the fence. They headed back home as the town awoke. Breakfast was eggnog and hot tea and cookies and Christmas carols and colored lights and love. As in all happy Christmas homes, the gifts were under the tree. Maniac gave Grayson a pair of gloves and a woolen cap and a book. The book did not appear to be as sturdy as the others lying around. The cover was blue construction paper, and the spine was just stapled. The text was a hand-lettered, and the pictures were stick figures. So I think we're figuring out this is a homemade book, right? And the title was The Man Who Struck Out Willie Mays. And the author's name, which Grayson read aloud with some difficulty, was Jeffrey L. Magee. Maniac, in his turn, opened packages to find a pair of gloves and, of course, butterscotch crimpets and a spanking Snow White never-ever-used baseball. He was overjoyed, rushed to the old man and hugged him. The old man put up with that for a second, then he pulled away. "Hold on," he said, and he went to one of the baseball equipment bags and reached in, tunneled down to the bottom, and came up with another present. This one was just wrapped crudely in newspapers. "I was hiding this one," he said. "I didn't know if you were the kind of kid who sneaks looks." Maniac tore it open and gaped helplessly when he saw what it was. To anyone else, it was a ratty old scrap of leather, barely recognizable as a baseball glove, fit for the garbage can. But Maniac knew at once this was Grayson's, the one he had played with all those years in the minors. It was limp and flat, the pocket long since gone. Slowly, timidly, as though entering a shrine, the boy's fingers crept into it, flexed, and he curled the cracked leather, brought it back to shape, to life. He laid the new ball in the palm, pressed glove and ball together, and it was like the glove remembered and gave way and made a pocket for the ball. The boy could not take his eyes off the glove. The old man could not take his eyes off the boy. The record player finished the Christmas polka and clicked off, and for a long time, there was nothing but happy silence. 5 days later, the old man was dead. That's a pretty horrible spot to stop, isn't it? But I'm going to stop here anyway. I'll let you all go get your tissues. I'm going to go get my tissues, and we'll pick back up later.